I was in the 8th grade when I went through my first real heartbreak. A longtime crush, someone who'd been an on and off girlfriend, finally ended things for good. It happened on a cold, silent bus ride back from the football game during a band trip. The night was filled with the hum of quiet conversations, the steady drone of the bus wheels, but for me, it was the beginning of a quiet, personal storm. That night I felt like I was adrift, alone, unmoored, with the sinking feeling that I had lost something irretrievable. But it was in that moment, on that bus, that poetry found me. Or maybe I found it. Lines came to me without warning, like they'd been waiting to surface all along. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, from where he came, go he must. He left this earth with peaceful wishes, so that all may recognize man's many glitches. He is a soul forever, and forever he will be. These words were my first line of defense against the emptiness I felt. I didn't know what I was writing or why, only that I had to keep writing. A teacher noticed something was different about me. You seem more introspective, she said one day. When I told her I'd started writing poetry, her eyes lit up. She handed me a well-worn book of poems by T.S. Eliot. Little did I know, these pages held words that would stay with me for years to come. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. In those words, I saw myself. Here was someone who seemed to be measuring his days with small, mundane moments while wrestling with deep existential questions. I realized poetry could be a refuge, a place to make sense of all the confusion and loss swirling inside of me. I took that book everywhere with me. Eliot's words, especially the opening lines of The Wasteland, stayed with me. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire. While poetry felt like prophecy, a way of realizing things about myself that would reveal themselves quite later. Eliot's The Wasteland speaks to a fractured world. It is a poem filled with shifting perspectives and fragmented language that capture the despair and loss of meaning many felt in the wake of the Great War. Through his words, I found my own language for alienation, confusion, and the hope for meaning, even in despair. At home, life was complicated. My father's anger, my mother's love that sometimes felt too much, created a world where I felt suffocated, weighed down. Poetry became my escape, my salvation from the sadness and isolation that felt too heavy to bear. Writing poetry was like stepping into a sanctuary, a place I could enter when the rest of the world felt too sharp and harsh. I started calling it my passionate grotto, a candlelit recess of spirit and soul. Here I wasn't just lost teenager, I was a creator, shaping my pain into words that could actually mean something. In those quiet moments of writing, I felt a connection to something divine. And in those moments, the words of other poets began to resonate, filling the void with the voices of those who seemed to understand. Jack Kerouac's words, for instance, from On the Road, where he described God in the clouds above the desert, saying, "Go thou across the ground, go moan for man, go moan, go groan, go thou, and be minute as a seed in the pod." It was a powerful image of being on a journey, of something sacred found in the everyday. Poetry made me feel as if I was guided, as if the words themselves were showing me a way through. Rami's words became my lifeline. Poetry is the language of the heart. Without it, how does one speak of pain or joy? It was a reminder that poetry wasn't just an outlet, it was a survival. It was a way to transform overwhelming pain into something that made sense and something even beautiful. Then the beat poets came crashing into my life. Jim Morrison, Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, William S. Burroughs. Their raw honesty was like a tidal wave. Morrison spoke of life as a dark theater, asking, "Did you have a good world when you died? Enough to base a movie on?" His words dared me to face the darkness I felt inside. Burrow, with his line, "The word is now a virus," haunted me. Language, he said, could infect us, could change us. And I knew I had been changed by poetry. It was in me, reshaping my world from the inside out. I learned that poetry isn't just a refuge for the broken. It's for anyone who wants to feel something deeper, to understand the human heart and spirit. In a world that values logic, poetry insists on emotion, on intuition, on the complexity of being human. As Rilke said, "For the sake of a single poem, you must see many cities, many people, many things." Poetry asks us to look closely at life, to pay attention to each small detail, to feel the gesture of flowers opening in the morning. In the darkest moments when I felt the most alone, poetry was the light that brought me back to myself. And once I found myself again, I could finally look at the creative spark in others, in the world around me. As Kerouac wrote, "The only people for me are the mad ones, the ones who burn, burn, burn like fabulous yellow Roman candles." Poetry is my lens on life, a life filled with beauty, meaning, and depth, even in the smallest moments. Thank you for your attention, and good luck.